Welcome, everyone. My name is Kara Winger. As you probably know, if you made it here and interacted with our Instagram promos of this webinar, this is yet another parody webinar for professional female athletes only. And it is our second to last one before the Christmas holiday. Next week, Gia Goodrich will be back to talk to us about being magnetic on video. I am EOS Director of Athlete Services, also a javelin thrower, and Bill Shelton is our real host today, CEO of EOS and co-founder extraordinaire, as well as master negotiator. So the case study we're going to talk about today is something that Bill and the EOS team really led me through in a time that was like a little bit weird in my life before I got to the position that I have now with that fabulous team. So I will start to share my screen and we will get going. Excellent. Here we are. Once again, today we're going to talk about a case study in a negotiation that I went through with the aid of Bill Shelton, again, negotiator extraordinaire. Bill, as you know, is our CEO, but he is also very accomplished on Wall Street in many different finance positions, and just throughout the business world has served on many different boards. And is an advocate for a lot of different marginalized groups of people. So figuring out objectively where the power lies in a negotiation is something that he has honed through some really different experiences than other people in the business world. And that's a really fun thing to have at your disposal as a parody athlete with this phenomenal person in your ranks.
So I'm going to go through kind of the agenda for today, but the thing that I want you each to kind of think of is to how does this apply to you? And since all of you are athletes, the thing that you think about sometimes is expect negotiation to just happen. And it doesn't just happen, it comes through practice. And the thing that you kind of remember is a lot of times you have to separate how you view yourself from negotiation, because it's not really about it's getting the maximum to get what you're worth. So many athletes, particularly professional female athletes, do not really understand your value. So part of this exercise will be, even though we're focused on a case study, is going through a process. And then to really analyze really what are the factors that you can do to determine whether you are in a position of power or not. So again, it's not what you're worth, it's what you negotiate. And in this particular case study, we're going to go through the following. We're going to go through the kind of the timeline of the negotiation, give you a little historical context so that you can see how it is in your own life. But that's important. The offer that was actually given to Kara for this position, the pros and the cons. Again, this is part of the things that you should do. A lot of time is spent on defining what's important to you, the pros and the cons. Then the next is the 6 negotiation focus areas. This is something that we did in our first negotiation. So if you don't know what that is, I'm going to give a review of that, but you can go back to that initial webinar that's been saved. Then we discussed the plan of action and then the outcome, and we open it up for questions. But the intention here is, while we're going to this case study, is to see if what part of this resonates in your own life. And then please feel free to ask questions, because our intention in doing these is to provide a service to make you all more effective than you already are. You're already outstanding, but how to even be more helpful. So it's myself. I have a very eclectic background, but I was a board member for USATF. I've negotiated tons of contracts for myself where I've gotten, I won't even tell you how much extra money by just asking, but it's fun. But what I had to kind of learn from all of this is really just come outside of my shell. So the people who were involved with this, it was myself and Kara. Kara was in the USATF, was the elite mentorship program, and I was mentoring her. And then while she was in this program, and then while she did more work, she got this offer from an institution. Now, the important part of this, which is kind of different, is that the institution was somebody that she still might have a long-term relationship in the future. So we had to be very, very careful so that we didn't do anything offensive. You know what I mean? So managing relationships that you're going, negotiating with people that you're going to have an ongoing relationship can be sticky. One thing I'll say on that I want you to think about is when you know that you're going to be telling a person no, you really don't want to do that. What you want to do is give them something that they have to tell you no to, as opposed to you telling them no. That kind of maintains the relationship. So, if you know you really don't want to do it and it's not interesting, just up that offer so much that they're more inclined to tell you, well, I don't want to, than you just telling them no and them getting their feelings hurt. So then we're going to also talk about the how do we navigate that negotiation with the factors that we talked about. One, that they're really, really important to Kara's long-term career interests. Two, how to make it in a way that if it's something, that she does accept, it's something that she really wants.
And again, this EOS career coaching and mentorship program was something I was already doing to prepare for my future, but it surprised me as I was going through it that I had this resource to help me navigate a negotiation within that program. So it's not just about your long-term future, it's a support system that can help you now in whatever you're going through by having these mentors available to you. So the overall timeline of this negotiation was much faster than I remembered. I went back and I was looking at all the details and emails, and I think that can be relatable. When we have an offer that is A, surprising, B, maybe not what we want, and C, something we maybe have not encountered before, it can feel like this monumental event in our lives. And the fact that it was over pretty quickly was really interesting for me to look back on. So I had kind of initial contact without really knowing what the offer was. Last year, August 6th, I got the actual offer on a phone call around August 13th. And then we spent the next week deciding what to do about it. And everything was over by August 21st. So it was this really quick thing, but that's kind of what I want to talk about too, is that when you get this offer, capitalizing on kind of the maybe emotional reaction, but also just charge that you get from such an offer and a negotiation process can be really helpful in being motivated to do the difficult research and things like that, and have the hard conversations that you need to really figure out where the power lies. So that's the overall timeline. I'll talk about the historical context. We may have lost, oh, there he is. Bill, you disappeared from my screen, but I'll keep going. So historical context for me in this offer is that, like Bill said, it was an entity that I was familiar with, I had worked with in the past, and I, knew/hoped that I was going to continue working with in the future, because they give grants to athletes, financial support for training. And I had gotten grants a lot, mostly in my early years as an athlete, which I think is also something that we can all relate to. Now at 34, and this was last year, I hadn't gotten these grants for a couple years because they are development grants, and I'm in my mid-30s, so I've kind of disappeared from the radar a little bit. In the meantime, those grants had increased in size pretty exponentially. And so the fact that I hadn't gotten them in recent years meant that I had missed out on the largest grants that they'd ever given to athletes before. But regardless of not receiving money in recent years, I still had a good relationship with them. I maintained kind of that working relationship, even though I hadn't been financially rewarded in a while. So this phone call that initially happened was pretty much out of the blue. I didn't necessarily know what they wanted to talk about when they were first contacting me. And I was actually in the midst of kind of the championship season. I was in Lima, Peru at Pan Am Games when I had this first initial contact. So I was focused, on my job. And since they knew me, it was a little bit weird that they would make me this offer at a time that was, focused on performance and execution of my primary job, which is female athlete. And then the offer was based around maternity leave for the person whose job I would be taking over. So I knew that they had a timeline that was, important on their end. So they were kind of prioritizing their timeline rather than mine in this offer, just in the timing of it. So The other part of it that made me feel like I did have power is because we hadn't talked for a while, it was very clear to me that they sought out my talent, that they saw that I could be good in this position, and that they valued me for that reason. So the actual offer, because the COO was going on maternity leave, was to essentially be acting COO, that I would manage donor relationships, communicate with grantees, which is my fellow athletes, and then something that they hadn't prioritized before is like building their social media presence. I knew I could do that stuff, but the offer was framed as a grant of $5,000 for about 10 hours a week for 6 months or more to accommodate that maternity leave. As the EOS team, as Bill and I were talking about this, that equated to almost $20 an hour. And just the way it was kind of explained to me really was open-ended in what those hours would be. As we all know, like maybe you sign up for 10 hours a week, but if you are a motivated female athlete like most of us are, you're probably going to do more work than that. And that set amount was really scary to me to receive in this offer.
I have a few things I wanted to add to what you were saying that's really important in negotiation. A lot of times what people, I call it the cheeseburger test. And a lot of times people in a negotiation will talk about something to you and it'll do it to make you feel good, to tell you these things. But one of the things I like to do is says, can you get a cheeseburger with it? And if you can't get a cheeseburger with it, you have to determine how much value it is. So sometimes people might do things like tell you how great you are, tell you that, and you should accept that, but you should translate those accolades into things that have value to you so you can buy a cheeseburger.
Yeah, and I mean, I might have been able to buy one cheeseburger with the initial offer, but considering all the other factors, yeah, we kind of moved forward. So for me, the pros and cons of this offer were, pro, like I said, it was clear that they sought me out, that they saw value in the job that they were asking me to do, like that they saw my clear ability. I had no experience in something like this before, but it was just really neat that like maybe the way that I had communicated with them throughout, the 10 plus years that I had known them showed them that that I could do a good job in this role. So professional experience that I didn't have before, that was a pro. Closer ties to this entity, again, that I'm probably going to work with in the future, or I'm hoping that I will work with in the future. And then networking, maybe like I'm getting to know these donors, I'm getting to know people that I didn't have a direct line to before. And so that potential was kind of a cool thing to think about. Cons, the time constraints, like at that point in my life, I wasn't quite ready to jump into something that felt like more of a time commitment that someone else was determining, exactly when in a day I was going to be working for them. And then not enough money for what they were asking, in my opinion. Also, this is an emotional con, but it was framed as a grant. Like it's still money, but in this situation, this entity is giving other athletes grants for not doing a job. So if I'm working and I'm getting a similarly framed amount of money as a grant, but it's not as much as the other grants that people get, what the heck is that? Like, it was just not a good way to think about it for me entering into the potential situation. So those are my pros and cons. What do you guys think the pros and cons are? Or do you have a similar experience that you can speak to pros and cons about? Nikki, I saw you come off mute.
Yeah, I definitely think the $5,000 as a grant is a con. Just because when I first saw that, I'm like, you're asking me to do a job, why would you like put it as a grant? Because now in my mind, I feel like that's kind of sneaky. Like, oh, if I have to ask you to do more work, I feel inclined to do it because I gave you a grant, you know what I mean? To whereas like if it was labeled as a job, with every job comes like a job description, so I'm doing X, Y, and Z. So I did not like that.
And like entering hours, right? Like if you're saying 10 hours a week, like why would what's the difference? Like, am I just going to stop at 10 hours because of this grant? I'm probably not, because you've done me a favor by giving me a grant. I agree.
And on top of that, I also wonder, I mean, you probably could because people put things on their resume all the time, but then I don't know, for me, it's kind of weird to like put something on my resume as a job when it wasn't given to me as a job, but as a grant. And people don't necessarily put grants on their resumes unless you're, I guess, applying for another grant and you're like, oh, look at the grants I've received in the past. So that was also weird.
I've never thought about that. That's a really good one.
As I would try to, let me tell you a few things that I'm noticing already. Already, it feels like Kara and Nikki are kind of personalizing the negotiation, and you're taking it personally that they offered the word grant. That can cloud your judgment. You know what I mean? Because let me say it different. If the number was, I'm going to do this as $1 million grant, I bet a lot of people would feel differently about it, right? So it's not the grant per se. So the only reason I'm telling this to you, Nikki, and to you, to Kara, is when you start emotionalizing a negotiation, they have valid reasons for doing it. So keep an open mind. And it's very fair to say, hey, why did you do it as a grant? That's fair. And then based upon their answer, then you can take it one way or the other. But what I would say is that a lot of times I've seen a lot of people make mistakes early on because that initial offer gets them so angry that they miss opportunities later to maximize it. You could be 100% correct, and you probably are. I'm just saying, just how you respond to be kind of careful. And does that make sense, Nikki?
Yeah, it does.
Meredith had her hand up. Do you have a question or an input, like pros and cons?
I have an input. Can you hear me fine? Okay. I guess I totally agree with the cons, but I would add on a pro is that you weren't expecting this at all and it dropped in your lap. So now you're $5,000 richer, which is fantastic. I mean, that would be a pro. And yeah, I mean, how cool that you weren't looking for something and somebody sought you out. I definitely understand the cons, and I'm probably leaning more towards that because, like, you know, we're discussing mistakes and I'm hoping to get better. But yeah, I think it's great that you were offered 5.
And I agree that, like, hey, wow, cool, someone sees my value, but is that my value is the whole conversation. And that's really what I like came around to, is like, neat, like someone headhunted me basically. But now, you know, it's my job to determine if they've undervalued me in this offer. And that's what this learning process really was like, this is not something I ever would have sought out on my own, especially at that point in my life. But learning how to respond to this offer that didn't sit well with me because it wasn't enough was just a really neat learning process. And that's why I wanted to talk about it. But I agree. Neat. You value me. Like, you see that I could do a good job. Just let's like explore more why it didn't feel necessarily right. Cool.
Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for the input. And we'll move on. We have a couple more slides to talk about everything that's happening. So here we go. Bill.
So I'm going to kind of review the negotiation focus areas. And this is something that, you know, that Kara and I did initially, just to kind of level set this, because when you do these questions, what it allows you to determine is how much time should I spend on this? Do I really care about it? All of that stuff. So it helps in your negotiation, because if something's super important and has high value, of course, that's going to you're going to spend more time. Another thing is, so what is the first thing? Importance. Does this something that you care about? And it doesn't have to be that whether it's you're being paid a lot of money or it's a high profile position, it doesn't matter. Is it important to you? Okay. And that it could be just an opportunity to be on a not-for-profit board for something. And in this case, it felt like it was a unique opportunity. You know what I mean? Because as Kara said, they sought her out to be like an acting COO. So that's a great thing. You know what I mean? Preparation is also very important. And I'd say that because a lot of times, like the bid and the offer, what they ask you to do versus what your offer is back, let's say, can vary, right? So they didn't know, or may not have known, that she had an undergrad degree from Purdue and she had MBA from DeVry. They may not. So part of your preparation is to how do you prepare the things to kind of bridge the gap. You know what I mean? And the other thing you had to do is to learn more about the organization so that you approach this the right way, you know? Because this is not like buying a used car that you're never going to see the person again. This was an organization that she wanted to have a long-term relationship with, that she had to do it in the right way and to make it, to manage it, whether she accepted it or not. One of the most important things that I think that our audience at Parity misses is the power dynamic. A lot of the times you have so much power. So in this particular case, Kara had already been doing an excellent job. The COO was going on maternity leave. She didn't really need this or care about this. So she had all of the opportunity and the power here. And so that gives, you know, let's say there was a different scenario where she was about to, you know, be kicked out on the street for not paying her mortgage or something. Whether this was, you know, the dynamic can change depending on the power or not. And in this case, you know, she had a lot of the power. Before you do anything and after, you know, when you're in this negotiation process, and this is a big mistake that I see a lot of people do, they don't determine their kind of walk away point. And the walk away is, look, that's just too low, or no matter what, you're going to accept it because let's say the number was so high that you're going to accept. So you think about those things prior to the negotiations getting, you know, started. And that's really, really important. You had to, and in order to do that, she had to do more research on her monetary value, find out what a person with her background, you know, would make, and all of those things, so she could be a realistic walk away and her realistic monetary value. I will add on this: there's market value and then what you negotiate. There's many times in my life where I have gotten significantly more than the market value because I had the power and I took the shot. So a lot of times what you accept may be significantly more than market value, and it can change during the negotiation a little bit depending on that. But another reason I'd like to determine walkaway prior to starting is emotions, as I talked about. A lot of times emotions, people can get, they're devaluing me. They're taking it so personally of what the person's negotiation strategy is. So if you can prepare and you can write these things out beforehand, then it's easier to not take it personally. So when they offer $20 an hour and you've done your preparation, it's easy to say, thank you for the offer, but I'm really interested in this job, but I'd really like to understand how you got to that $20 an hour, because based upon my experience as a graduate from Purdue, blah, 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 my experience as being an emissary for the USATF for all this, and my MBA, I actually had my natural market value as X. By doing it that
I would add too, Bill, that as a female, a fellow female, this was actually really complicated. And I just thought about this with the COO going on maternity leave. I was like, oh, I feel bad that this person is going to be like, missing time, and she really needs me, and I'm a fellow woman. And it was just a really like another complication and another emotional factor in the whole situation.
But I will tell you this, and but I have seen so many people use these factors to help their position. You understand? So like, it's good that part of the reason that everybody wants to work with you, Cara, is because you have these emotional attachments. You know what I'm saying? And that's good, but you have to realize that they sometimes are used as a negotiation strategy. So just consider that. And then the last one is deadlines. It's important to put deadlines, because what you don't want to be doing is spending a whole lot of time on a project that has little value. And also, my experience in negotiation is, let's say, a lot of times if it would take 2 months, you could get it in 1 month done. And it really pushes the other side to make decisions as opposed to waste each other's time. So those are the 6 things. You can go back and look at the webinar that we had done before to kind of, to get a refresher on that. Are there any questions on any of those 6 negotiation areas?
Hi, I have a question.
Yes.
Okay. In the last 2 years, I've walked away more than 6 times from job offers.
Yes.
I do have my lower number. I mean, I do that on a regular basis. I kind of know what the ballpark is that I feel I should be offered. And I will say in these 6 scenarios, I happen to know that they went with their second choice, a man, and offered them almost double. I mean, is there something, I like what you said as far as like asking them how they came to that number, but I do then tend to get really emotional and I feel sometimes blow it instead of help myself. Like, are there some key things to say when you know that you're probably not being valued?
Yes. And there are things, and I'll give you a few of them. And
Okay.
and as a woman, I can only understand. I can empathize because I have seen people kind of with particularly women of color in the corporate workforce, where I see there's like these different things. So the first thing I would say to you is try to practice your responses with your friends so that it does not come across as emotional. And let me give you an example of what I mean, Meredith. It's saying like, hey, first you want to say, and hey, look, I really, this offer really intrigues me, really does. And so I hope we can make this work. Now, prior to getting this situation, Meredith, what you want to have established is, yeah, I'm really interested if the market value is hit. You understand what I mean? So you're establishing prior to, look, I really like this job. I hope we can make this work out. And then when they give you the number that's so much lower, then the first thing you could say is, wow, thank you. So you're probably closer to the market. I do a lot of things that say it like I really care, because I really don't. And I will be prepared to be very direct if they don't answer the right way. But the point I'm making is you'd say, I really want to understand how you got to this number, because it's wider than what I thought, but I could be missing some information. And a lot of times that can be helpful, because I remember one time I was offended at an offer. And I wanted to get mad and I asked for clarification, and I just realized that they had just changed the cash stock portion. So they were still going to give me the total amount, but when I asked them to explain, I could learn that before I just was emotional. Does that make sense, Meredith?
Yes. And it's
so I would just say, look, hey, I'd like to understand, because that's a little wider based upon, and you lay out the criteria that you came to your conclusion.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on these? Have you used these 6 negotiation focus areas? Is there anyone who wants to talk about a specific area that they might need some help in right now? Remember, the intent here is to help you in specific things that you may have going on in your life.
Sorry, Nikki, I pushed ask to unmute on accident. Yeah. I think the emotions one and the power one are where I learned the most in this negotiation. And I love Meredith's question about like how you figure out what your market value is. And we'll talk about that when we get to the research part for sure. But if anyone has any other input, now's your turn.
I will also say, I'll tell you, I was thinking about this. There was one time in my life where I was almost emotional, and it was a time when I needed something, and I was working on Wall Street, and it was a combination of, like I said, stock and cash, and I felt, and Minji worked at this company too. It was pretty shitty of a company, and we knew that they would renege on deals. So I remember them trying to renege on. They wanted to give me a stock as my bonus as opposed to cash, and the stock sucked. Excuse my language, but it was not what I wanted. So, and I was doing a good job, and they went to this mealy mouth language in the contract, and I said, well, that's not something that you and I had agreed upon. I don't care what it says there. That's not what we agreed upon. So I escalated it and I escalated it. And finally, and this is to the point of keeping out emotion, I was talking to the head of the global division, and I started it out with a very risky statement. And I said, am I doing a good job? And you better know what you're doing. He says, yes, Bill, you're surpassing expectations. And then I said, well, you and this firm is not matching my expectations. And he was getting mad. Are you saying that we're liars? I said, no, I'm just stating a statement of fact that this is a relationship and you all aren't meeting my expectations. Now, Nikki, I want you to notice that could have gotten really bad if it was emotional, but I just stated it as a statement of fact. It is a relationship and you aren't meeting my expectations. So this individual says, Bill, I can't do this, I can't do that. But what he said, I can't give you that as cash. But by making my problem clear, he gave me an increase in salary that made up for that amount. Do you understand? So it was and that's ongoing, because once they did it, it's forever. And really, I didn't even care. But that amount, I can't remember, but it was several $100,000. So that changed the dynamic, not just for this year, but for the next year and the next year. And Minji could tell you, I was a happy camper. You understand what I'm saying? But the point I'm making in this is you got to keep emotion out of it. You got to keep your facts, and you got to be good at your job when you're asking for these things at the same time. But these things can be testy, and it is hard, particularly when you know that they do other things that aren't fair. But you have to keep out of it. So I'm sorry.
I love it. But being above board, like knowing that you're coming in, like being consistent and a good value add to any situation is like so much confidence. And that's really what I learned in this situation too.
I really like that. And, keeping the emotion out of it can be hard, because sometimes as an athlete who is trying to fund their training, it feels like every opportunity is one we just have to jump on and take. And if that's the case, if you really need the money, you go back and forth, there's nothing wrong with taking it. But I think the important part is speaking up, even if you do take the money. So something I always say is, look, I really like this brand or your organization and what you're trying to accomplish. It's just, this is a little less than I expected because of the amount of time that I'm going to spend, representing your company. And when I take time away from my training and my recovery and focusing on my sport, I have to make sure that the time spent is going to pay me back in dividends on either supporting my training, supporting my recovery, supporting my pursuit to gold. And so, I would really like to, like Bill said, I'd really like to make this work. Is there any way we can talk about the number that you threw out? Because I was looking at like more something like this. And I think, you have to know that even if it's no right now, to Bill's point, if you leave it in a good way, they can come back to you later once they have their ducks in a row and they understand it. I think the point is just never be afraid to speak up. If someone offers you a number, even if you end up taking it, if someone offers you a number you feel like doesn't suit your value, and then you can decide for yourself what your bottom number is and take it. Or if you do take it, they need to know, like, hey, I want to start a relationship with your organization. So please know that I'm taking this now because I'd like to show you how good I am. And then moving forward, we can continue to talk about how it can be mutually beneficial for both of us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
like I've stated my worth. I'm going to show you that it's true, but we can move forward together in the future for sure.
One thing about that, and I 100% agree with everything you said. And on the counter side of that is I had to take a job once for almost no money back when I wanted to come back on Wall Street because I had no negotiating power. You know what I mean? No mandatory. But the thing that I would say to add to Lauren's thing, or two specific, she said them both, but I want to be clear. One, when you're saying it's not enough, be specific on what you're wanting and why you're wanting it. That's key. Because a lot of times I've heard athletes say, well, that's not enough, but it's not really clear on what you want. The second thing I would say is, well, what do I have to do to earn this next level? What defines success to you? Because I'm going to crush this, and I do want to come back after I surpass expectations to do that. But so what is the it that I need to do to accomplish and get this next amount that I want? So those two things that I would add.
So these are some of those objective things, and Bill will kind of give like a 35,000 foot overview of like how to go about structuring the process of coming up with the counteroffer.
Yeah. So the key part is consider yourself, just like you are as an athlete, you have different specialists that help you out. And you want these specialists that you know are vested in your success. So I personally have a personal board of directors. And you see the car does too. And these are people who are interested in her success. You know what I mean? And also have a history of working with her so that they can be unbiased and tell, well, you're being emotional, you're not. I would always, when it's just like a board of directors for any of your NGOs, make them balanced. Don't want all people who just love you or people that just know one side of you. You want people that know all aspects of you so you can get the right amount of balanced input. The second is the research. We thought after this, she had her plan. She talked to these different board of directors. So that was that process one. But the second part of this is she had to do, remember that work that we talked about. What is her value? Okay, they offered $20, right? So the point is that real if it's not real? And then why? So she did a lot of research. What is the typical CIO salary for that region? What is her worth as an MBA? How do I reconcile the grant factor to me is also something because it was important to her. So those are the things that are called research and preparation. The next thing is, how do you draft the counteroffer? Remember, if this was a relationship she didn't care about, like I'm buying a used car, you don't really care whether you offend the individual or not, or a lot of other factors. But this is a relationship that she wanted to maintain. So how could she respond after she knew what she wanted in a way that even if it didn't work out, that both parties still could remain friends? And then the last part is the practice and the execution of that plan that was laid out in the process. Any questions on that?
I would add that the sponsor of our webinar today, Long Draw Woodworks, just kidding, Parady's the sponsor, but Russ, as supportive and objective, like he's a very realistic husband in my life. So having people that, again, like Bill said, can tell you, no, you're being emotional, stop it, like revisit, repractice, do it over again is super important. Any questions? I'll go into detail about this specific instance too here. So for me, as somebody who hadn't really encountered this situation before, again, I was like surprised by the offer. I had some emotions surrounding like being valued, being undervalued, also wanting to like do a favor to this company whose COO was going on maternity leave. And this research like section of the plan of action was super important for me understanding my value. So Bill has mentioned it. I have a bachelor's degree from Purdue and an MBA from DeVry University via a scholarship with the USOPC. So right there's my academic value, my ability to apply for things that other people don't get, my prowess within the Olympic space in order to get this grant or this scholarship to a graduate program and do really well, get the degree. So it's just really easy for us as female athletes to focus on our value as athletes versus being really objective, about what we have accomplished in that athletic realm, and then adding all of the academic stuff that we have also done and all of the volunteer stuff. Like if you're in leadership in your sport, those are really valuable experiences that you can take to any employer later as well. So coming up with these like, what about me applies to the real world as it in the context of this job offer. The power thing was something that I hadn't really had in mind before, but became really obvious to me, like Bill said. They needed me. They were kind of in a sticky situation whereas I had kind of all the time in the world to decide, and also really no skin in the game as far as like considering the offer beforehand. On the grant note, I tried to take that aspect of it. So we countered with a compensation package, and then I asked for a grant reconsideration. Say, hey, I should make this much money because of these reasons, but also I would like you to reconsider me for a grant. And that was not an emotional reconsideration request necessarily, but it was something that was going to reconcile the grant factor for me. But it made me so nervous to do, because like, do I deserve that? This was a time in my life when I was like, is that okay? But again, my athletic accomplishments, especially in that time period, more than meant I should have been considered already. And the financial need for me was there. So Bill reassured me that I had reason to keep it in there. And we'll discuss that in the next slide too. And then again, be timely, be thorough, but timely, because these offers don't stick around forever. I really enjoyed like being proactive in doing the research and talking to my board of directors within a short time frame, because I was motivated. I was really like, there were a lot of, there was adrenaline, like, what do I do? This is crazy. I got to figure it out right now, and then do that in a really good way. So it's easier to accept something if you've been like, oh, I'm just sick of this. Why don't we just get it done? That's how I feel. So the grant reconsideration.
Yeah, this was.
Mm-hmm.
Huh?
Why not ask? Yeah.
That's right. So the thought was, again, remember all of the factors that we had talked about, and I want to kind of walk through why we did it in a certain way. So the reason for we asked for the grant is, remember, let's also back up. At this time when it wasn't really clear that she wanted to do it. So the thought was, remember I started out as you want to put things out there that if it doesn't work out, it's them saying no to you as opposed to you saying no to them. So another thing is we thought, okay, first, just generally speaking, again, we wanted to practice. And we've talked about this at the beginning. And you only get good at negotiation through practice. And that's what this intention was. Remember, she didn't really need this. She was in the position of power, but this was something that she went through, practice at full speed in order to try to get it. There was really low cost to asking, particularly if you ask it in a respectful way. As it says, the worst case is they say no. The best case is you get it. So there's really no upside as long as you do it professionally, For the compensation, a lot of times this is a pattern. If you take something super low, that you're on that trajectory forever. So in this way, if you're denied a reasonable request, and you are able to explain your ask by the supporting documentation, at the very least, even if they say no, it puts you ready to do something else in the future. You know what I mean? So next year, when you're asking for more, you started establishing a baseline. So, all of those were the reasons why we thought, okay, let's go for it and ask for this grant reconsideration. Any questions on that?
Meredith, you can go for it. If you should still have the capability to unmute.
Okay, I unmuted. I'm becoming a Zoom pro. Thank you. Oh gosh. I guess, okay. I'm going through interviews right now.
Yes.
And I'm at the point where I think I'm going to get the offer. And my favorite is always like, in my field, they don't tend to list money often. So you really just have to kind of think the range going in. And they like to throw the ball to me. Mm-hmm. Do I throw out the number first, or do I wait for them to throw out a range first?
Yeah, I will say it depends on your position and power, right? Let's say you have a great job, you're getting great money and they're looking you out, then you put a number, right? If you're really in need of a job, it's different. And what you don't want to do is give a number a lot of times in the beginning, you don't want to put a number that disqualifies you. You want them to really love you, and then you give the number. Do you know what I mean? So what I usually do in the beginning is say something like this. I'd say, I think, you all are in the market a lot more than I am, and I bet you're probably a lot closer to understanding my market value. I'm willing to accept any job that pays me my value in the market and reward. You know what I mean? That recognizes my successes and my market value. That's a very vague answer, but the point that you're trying not to do is you're not trying to disqualify yourself early on. You want them to love you first.
Okay. Bill, I got to get a friend in practice. I do.
Bill,
Oh,
for speaking engagements, one of the things I do is I always do like a pre-call with the group, and I ask for a scope of work.
Yeah.
So we can talk through, and they can hear themselves talk through all of the things they're going to be asking of me.
Yes.
Before we talk about money, because it's really easy to just be like, we're going to give you this, but I want them to really talk through it. And then I just trying to go into detail and ask questions. It's always good to ask questions, because then you're like, oh crap, you're really professional. This is just not some preschooler doing a presentation. Like, this is a professional person coming into our organization. And then after we have that very long conversation and you talk about different things that you can talk about and different ways you can structure the speaking engagement, I go, so what exactly is your budget for something like this? And I did that on my last speaking engagement. That's the most I've ever been paid for a speaking engagement to date. So yeah, I think the more you can get them talking and realizing all of that's going to go into what they're going to be asking you to do and the amount of time and attention you're going to pay for it, and then make them try and give you a number first, the better. And Bill is he's part of my board of directors. So he's someone that gets those text messages all the time asking what I should charge for stuff. So
I will always say that's, Lauren, those are great examples of you kind of demonstrating your research and also demonstrating your power that you actually know these things. I'd like all of you also to consider that you're always in negotiation mode. So when you're talking to potential brands, you're always throwing out things. You're always interviewing. You know what I mean? So one of the things I like to do is give people information even when I'm not asking something. So in EOS, for example, if we have customers that we know we're going to be going to eventually, I don't like to just be asking them for something. I'll be, during the course of a year, setting highlights on these different things that are happening. Oh, I just want to share with you that we just did this. Oh, I want to share with you that we just do that. So in addition to your board members, you have a group of stakeholders, potential prospects, current sponsors, all of these things, and send them information throughout the course of the year of things that are going well. Hey, just wanted to check in with you about COVID. I know you've always expressed an interest in my career. Things are going well. I feel like I'm on track. I just got this USOC grant, blah, blah, blah. You're just telling them these things, that it's a constant negotiation. You're telling them things without asking. I have found that if there's one thing that has helped me so much, it's just that. It's the setup.
Always be promoting.
Yeah, like a constant verbal newsletter of your life. I love that.
That's right.
And, one of the things I do now also is, obviously we, as athletes, and just because of the way things have shifted, you're going to get offers from companies all the time, and they, what the offer is going to end up being. But sometimes I use those people as practice with stuff. And so as long as it's a company that you could potentially see yourself promoting, because you don't want them to say yes and then have to back out. But I did this with like CBD companies are coming out of the woodworks. And so I did this with a CBD company. They wanted to give me free products. I'm not going to promote your CBD for free product, but I threw out some crazy numbers and put together, a content creation package for them to review, just to see what they would do with it. And it's a great I always see it as a great opportunity to practice with somebody that you're not emotionally tied to if you get it or not.
I like this, Lauren, and I also like the amount of preparation that you do. the thing that I would try to, like, the thing that that all of you should think about is, how do you leverage the stuff that you're giving to one organization for other people? You know what I mean? So as Lauren is preparing this information, is there other people she can send it around to? You know what I mean? In a way that's not specific to you know, to that market, but just as a way to constantly be dripping in and promoting yourself.
Learning, yeah, your value in one situation doesn't mean it's specific to that situation. You can transfer it to other opportunities. I love that. Shall we move on? Yeah, there will be more opportunity for conversation. So in this specific part of the plan of action, drafting the counteroffer, it was very cool for it to be a team effort. So I had my board of directors, but specifically in drafting the counteroffer, I'm always going to have my dad look over contracts or emails for different opportunities or things like that. He's like my constant person who's the final authority and stuff that I'm doing, and not authority, but really input giver. And then Bill and some of the other EOS team members were, you know, really helping me in a Google document, hone the language and make it specific, make sure the tone of the email was correct and professional and also clear, and, you know, filled with facts about what I was asking for and why. The confidence that I gained, again, in like learning the facts about who I am and what I'm worth through all of this research that I did, was a really cool part of this experience. And then timeliness, it only took a week to draft the counteroffer and get it sent off. And that was really cool because I had all this input constantly, and it was like something that was just always in my brain before I was going to sleep. How's this going? Am I going to execute on it well? Okay, let's do this. So I just want to dig into the compensation part. And Bill mentioned it a little bit earlier, that regionally we did research on like, what is a salary for a COO in Colorado right now? What is the going rate for someone with an MBA in any industry across the nation or in Colorado? Like, just a lot of different numbers that applied to my ability to do this job. And $30 an hour was actually a little bit less than what I'm maybe worth objectively. But in this situation, when I know that the entity is, you know, in a bind and it is something that I've never done before, I felt comfortable with that number, that it's a lot more than they asked. It's, you know, half again the amount of money they offered me in the first place, and something that I would be a lot more happy to do that work for. So all that research was really, really helpful for me in understanding that it's not about like who I am as an athlete necessarily, it's about who I am as an athlete and all of these things that I've done outside of it, which is what they were after in the first place. So all this evidence of why I'm worth $30 an hour. And then on top of that as well, we asked for that grant reconsideration that we already talked about.
I will say to you, and this is something, it's kind of, I don't know if it's applicable to everyone, but I'll share with one, when you are, you know, you're using data to support your mission. So she didn't just say, hey, it's too low. She said, why it's too low. And that's important. The second thing is, and I'm not suggesting that you all do what I'm about to suggest, but when I'm trying to negotiate big deals, I also have to consider how people have, you know, as a 6'3" big black guy on Wall Street, there's this perception of an angry black man. So I've had to sometimes change how I do my dialogue to overcome their own prejudices. So I spread my legs wider so I appear more their size. I'm even less emotional. My point is, I'm not suggesting that anybody change who they are. I'm just considering to ask you to consider that's another thing that you can sometimes leverage, is taking advantage of other people's wrong misperceptions to get what you want.
And on the opposite side of that, Bill, like as female athletes, I think it's far too common for us to be like, I'm sorry, but I would like this amount of money because I'm worth this. And it's definitely, yes. And Lauren hates that shit. But And I totally am like learning that process and coming around to it for sure. So for me, that's what was super important in this team effort of the counteroffer drafting, is that I'm always going to start from a place, I hope not always, but typically I start from a place of like, this is what I would like, rather than this is what I'm worth because of these reasons. And it was really a transformation in my thinking because of, again, the facts, the evidence that we came up with.
And remember,
This is my rate.
Yeah.
But look, you all, one of the things that's also helpful is just to ask their rationale. Look, you're saying, hey, my research says this $30 an hour based upon this. How did you get to 20? That's not an emotional thing. And a lot of times they'll say, well, that's what our budget was. Oh, well.
You should increase your budget because of me. Correct. Yeah. And again, like the foundation part was a little bit of a factor. Like they said, our administrative costs like can't be that high. So that's why we got to this number. And I'm like, well, if you're hiring me to do a job that is this job, this is what it's worth. So I understand that, but thank you, yeah. Execution of the plan. And again, this goes to, Bill maybe making himself more approachable in certain situations. And this was how it was really, easy for me to send this really strong counter offer, is that the structure of the email was like, thank you so much. I appreciate this offer. I'm going to tell you why I deserve what I'm asking for. And that was degrees and experience and stuff like that. And then positivity, mostly like, thank you for this offer again. I was surprised by it and I appreciate you thinking of me. This is why I'm worth this much, and that's what I would like you to pay. Another part of this exchange was, for me, I was in a competition season, in championship season. I knew that they had a deadline. And so I said, this will be the only counteroffer I give you, and you do with that what you will. Either you're going to accept it or you're not, and then I can move on with my competition season, and you can move on in your search for someone to fill this position. And then again, restatement of my gratitude, I actually put in there at the end, and this was after kind of they responded. If you would like me to help you build your social media, I would happily do that for a rate of XYZ. In either opportunities or hours per week that I'm working for you, just let me know. So that was the structure of the email: approachability, positivity, maintain the relationship. I know I'm going to work with them in the future, but still firm counteroffer. And then outcome, they were like, thanks. I really appreciate all the work you put into it. It's clear that you have thought this through, but it seems like we're not on the same page right now, to all of it. So like on both counts, counteroffer of the rate and counteroffer of asking for a grant reconsideration. They were like, not right now. I was relieved to not accept a job that I was going to be bitter about, if that's what the original compensation was going to be, the original offer. I was really proud of standing up for myself and learning what I was worth. And then I just learned how fun that can be, to say, hey, this is what I'm worth. It's scary, but now I'm exhilarated that I've set this precedent. And then confident in walking away after I did all that work and stated what I was worth.
Maddie's not over it. She's still emotional about it.
There's all these deliveries happening. It's crazy. Yeah. Bill, any input on the outcome? I thought it was great.
The thing I want to state, because remember, it's not your worth, it's what you negotiate. And I want you to tell that, because it can hit you both ways. It can hit you that you can get too cocky when you do big deals. So just take each deal on its own. I was very proud of Kara of how she handled this, because she went from a position of where she was kind of panicked about it to a position of power, strength, backed upon research. And even though the counter offer, they said no, there is no doubt in my mind that her impression of that organization is even higher. And should they want for her for something in the future, it's more likely that they come with a number that's in line with what she wants.
And they've given me grants since this happened. So that's a really neat outcome, that the relationship was maybe bolstered, like you say, from this experience together. So input from the audience. We'll stop sharing the screen in a minute so we can just talk about it. But if you have something to say now, that would be great. Anybody? Okay.
So we appreciate this time. And one of the things that we offer and we have offer, if you have specific, things that you need help with, we're here to support you. I mean, I remember, we if you have a specific negotiation that you want to put in an email, we're happy to try to help you. Our goal at Parity is to help you out to create your true value in the marketplace through the Parity, our sponsorship, and through all these independent negotiations. We view ourselves as a community that's based upon supporting each other. And this is an example of how we support each other. So please feel free, if I can help or any of the team can help in negotiations or other things in the future, just send me an email.
Hi, I have a question.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you guys, by the way, for this. This was very insightful. I'm Temi Fagbenle, I'm eating right now, so this is why you can't see me. I don't want to be too rude. But the question I have is why ask for where they got that number from when it sounds like that it doesn't even matter where they got the number from. You're just going to say, this is what I'm worth, or that's what I want, so why ask where they got the number?
Right. Why do you ask? Because a lot of times you can gain information that can help in your negotiation. Let's say that let's say they were just wrong, that the number that they had gotten was from 4 years ago, and they didn't realize the market value in that area has changed since then. And when you educate them, they can go to a higher number. So it's not that you're not listening. And that's a very important point. It's not that you don't care. There has to be some gap between what you say and what the person's willing to offer. And sometimes it won't matter. Let's say they say, Tammy, all we have is $20 in our budget. Then another thing is you would learn is, I shouldn't take this personal. They weren't trying to offend me. That's all they had. So remember early on, they were talking about people can get emotional. Why did they offer me so little? Why was it in a grant? So when you ask that number, you can take those factors out of it. And sometimes it's an education process.
Right. So if they were to say, okay, well, that's all the money we have, basically you can't continue this conversation.
Correct. Or you could say, they might say, okay, if you have $20 and that they give grants, or there might be other things that they could do, but you know that you can't change the $20. That's what I mean?
I think it also sets a precedent, right? So then that gives you the opportunity to say, okay, well, I really like what you're trying to accomplish, and this is much lower than my standard rate. That being said, I would like to start some sort of professional relationship with you where it can grow over time. And so that lets them know that the next time you guys do work together, they need to come with it. And they need to know that, you're going to under promise and over deliver. And then in the future, when you do great work, they'll know that they need to come with more.
I will say one thing. It's another generalization about, call it men, people of color, and women, is they always want to prove it first. And I'm saying, you know what I mean, Lauren, where they're saying, I'll take that job and prove it to you and then get it. I can tell you a lot of jokers on Wall Street, they just get it and they don't earn anything. Okay. So it's often hard to do this. I'll give you an example. I was talking to a super senior African-American woman who was about to be offered even a bigger job. And it was all of this stuff. And she was like, well, maybe I shouldn't accept that job. Let me back up a little bit and accept less money so I can prove it to them. You know what I'm saying? So my point is, no, you don't do that. No. But my point is also that as Tammy, Terry, or how do you say your name again?
Temi is fine.
Temi. So Temi, it's not that you're not listening, but you're trying to find a solution. And if it's not the cash, it's something else. You know what I mean? It's a whole different answer if they said $20 is all that's in our budget versus $20 is what the market is in this region. And when you can give them data, then it's a lot more.
Right. Gotcha. Thank you.
Bill,
Any other questions?
this is Meredith. I've got another one. Back to jobs and money.
Yeah.
And the question is, I'm back to, more job descriptions that don't have ranges. Should I just ask from day one? I mean, because like sometimes I'll go through these interviews and it's like 3 weeks later, now I know that they had, they were never going to offer more than X amount and it's not workable for me. Should I just save myself all the grief, or is that just a no-no?
It depends on where you are. So if what you have is a great job right now, then you don't waste your time. You ask them. If you're in need of a job, then you might have to go through it. But the point I would say to you is that I see sometimes people go for the money too soon, as opposed to demonstrating value. I remember there was one job particularly where I was, and this was at the job that I was paid a lot of money at Goldman when I ultimately accepted. They were interviewing me for a job that I knew was not going to be what I wanted to do. But I did that job so well in that interview that they gave, I didn't get that job, didn't want that job, but they came back with a job that paid me almost 3x the job that I had at JP Morgan.
Wow, Bill. Yes, I do. I think, I'm so excited to start building a relationship with you guys. I'm going to be one of these people that is calling you.
No, but again, the thing that we're trying to address is, look, the females athletes make 0.4 to $66 billion. We want to make it easier. We want to help you all negotiate. We want to, sometimes we're going to guilt companies into do it, but a lot of times we're going to educate them into realizing the power and the strength, the sophistication, and the excellence that are part of the parity community. And that also comes to negotiation too.
Amen. Thank you.
I have another question.
Yes.
One thing that I thought we would touch upon today, maybe it's not for today, but is the power of social media and kind of leveraging our platforms on there by working or collabing, if you will, with companies, and kind of I don't know if that's what I can use what we've talked about today, when talking to other companies in that way, because I'm not actually working for them. It's kind of just like me using my brand on social media to, I guess, push a company's product or something like that, Is there?
Yeah, so these webinars that we do are on a variety of topics. So there have been some webinars on how do you use, lighting in order to make your more professional. There's other is on how to create your own brand and authenticity. So if you go back and look on paritynow.co, you'll see a bunch of saved webinars on different topics that we're hoping. It's our hope and intention that we help you all not only get jobs for Instagram posts and other things, but increase the number of followers that you have, increase the ways that you get your engagement, learn how the Instagram algorithm works so that you can make your post more powerful. But those are different topics. This one was a follow-up on negotiation specifically.
Okay. Perfect.
And in terms of social media and negotiating, like, the influencer market is not defined, right? And so the experiences that we're trying to provide via Parity in having paid posts through our platform can hopefully inform like how you negotiate with any other one-off opportunity that you might get. However, we hope that you'll mostly utilize our services to have those paid post opportunities and really like shout to the masses how valuable they can be depending on the number of followers you have and how you grow. But yeah, it's not going away. It's part of the conversation as a female athlete when you're approaching sponsors and things like that, your social media presence. So relevant for sure. And more stuff that we want to talk about as far as, all of the different ways that you have to negotiate as an athlete in this world. But we want to be sensitive to your time as well. So we've already gone over a little bit. And I know that part of that was you guys waiting for me to turn the power tools off. So I really appreciate everybody's input. Again, Bill is master negotiator, and you saw his email on that last slide. He's also readily available via the website and everything. So thanks so much for attending today. This was a really, really good interactive webinar. And again, you'll get a feedback form in your email. So let us know that you loved it so we can maybe do something in the future. I know we've talked about other case studies in terms of how negotiations have gone. And so if you guys think that's valuable, please say that in your feedback form. Thank you so much. We'll see everybody next time. And watch for emails about paid posts and stuff like that too. We're growing rapidly. It's very exciting. So talk to you soon.